Hello, and welcome to the TI Precision Lab discussing op-amp bandwidth, Part 3. In this video, we'll discuss why you should always use the non-inverting gain to calculate bandwidth, as well as secondary effects on bandwidth, such as high-frequency pole location.
In Part 2 of this series, we discussed the definition of gain-bandwidth product. We demonstrated how to graphically determine the gain bandwidth of a circuit for a particular gain using the open-loop gain, or AOL, graph from a datasheet. However, we did not discuss the low frequency, or dominant pole, that appears in the graph. The dominant pole is the point on the AOL graph where AOL begins to roll off with frequency. This parameter is important when developing macro models. The frequency of the pole can be estimated from the AOL curve, but a more accurate approach is to calculate it using this equation, where GBW is the gain bandwidth product and AOL is the open loop gain of the device. Using the OPA 827 as an example, we find the device has a gain bandwidth product of 22 MHz, and the open loop gain is 126 decibels. We can convert 126 dB to its linear representation using this equation. Substituting 22 MHz and 1.995 times 10 to the 6th for gain bandwidth and open loop gain respectively yields a dominant pole frequency of 11.03 Hz. This calculation is consistent with the graph from the datasheet. In this slide, we further examine the OPA 827 open loop gain curve. We see that the DC open loop gain is 120 dB and remains constant until we reach the dominant pole. At frequencies greater than the dominant pole, the open loop gain decreases at a rate of minus 20 dB per decade. Notice that for the OPA 827, the slope of AOL is constant until we cross unity gain. Therefore, the gain bandwidth product is constant for closed loop gains from 0 to 120 dB. While it is common to have open loop gain curves decrease at a constant rate of 20 dB per decade, it is not always the case. For example, let's take a look at the high-speed OPA 847. This slide shows the AOL curve for the OPA 847, whose gain bandwidth product is defined only for a portion of the AOL curve. In this case, it's defined only for closed loop gains greater than 50 volts per volt. Looking at the open loop gain curve, we see that for gains greater than 50 volts per volt, or 34 dB, the slope of the AOL curve is minus 20 dB per decade. Therefore, the gain bandwidth product is equal to 3,900 MHz for all closed loop gains greater than 50 volts per volt. However, as the gain decreases below 50 volts per volt, the slope of AOL changes. Therefore, there is no gain bandwidth product specified. Instead, the closed loop bandwidth for particular gains is specified. Also notice that for gains less than 12 volts per volt, the phase margin indicates that the device is not stable. The table illustrates how the product of the gain and bandwidth is not constant for gains less than 50 volts per volt, but is constant for gains of 50 or greater. In Part 2, we calculated closed-loop bandwidth for a non-inverting configuration using the gain bandwidth product. You might be surprised to learn that the bandwidth calculation for the inverting configuration is calculated using the non-inverting gain. Note that the non-inverting gain is typically referred to as noise gain. This example shows the same amplifier connected in both an inverting and non-inverting configuration. The inverting configuration has a gain of -1, and the non-inverting configuration has a gain of +1. Let's start by calculating the bandwidth for the non-inverting configuration. The bandwidth for the non-inverting amplifier, U1, is calculated by taking the gain bandwidth product and dividing by the non-inverting gain. So, for this example, the bandwidth is 22 MHz divided by 1, which is equal to 22 MHz. On the other hand, the bandwidth of the inverting amplifier, U2, is calculated using the non-inverting gain. The gain with respect to the non-inverting input is calculated as RF divided by R1 plus 1, which is 2 in this example. So the bandwidth of the inverting amplifier is 22 MHz divided by 2, which is 11 MHz. A common mistake is to consider the gain seen by the signal source rather than the noise gain for the bandwidth calculations involving inverting amplifiers. This example is simulated to prove that the hand calculations are correct. Notice that the simulation and hand calculation results are very close to each other. The simulation uses a simple single-pole amplifier model to illustrate the relationship between bandwidth and circuit configuration. Later, we will see that a more comprehensive model includes secondary effects that have additional impact on the bandwidth. On the previous slide, we demonstrated that you always need to use the non-inverting gain, or noise gain, when doing bandwidth calculations. This leads one to wonder what the theoretical basis is for always using noise gain, regardless of circuit configuration. First, let's consider the inverting configuration. The transfer function can be derived using either the control system representation, shown on the left, or the circuit representation on the right. The control system representation is more intuitive, so let's focus on that. The transfer function of the inverting configuration is AOL divided by 1 plus AOL times beta, multiplied by the feed-forward factor, alpha. AOL is the only term in the equation that changes with frequency. Now let's compare the inverting and non-inverting configurations. Here we compare the inverting and non-inverting configuration side by side. Notice that the only difference between the two configurations is the feed-forward factor, alpha. Alpha is a constant scalar and does not affect bandwidth. The bandwidth is determined by the quantity AOL divided by 1 plus beta times AOL. This term is the same for both the inverting and non-inverting configurations. Furthermore, since AOL is the same in both cases, the bandwidth is set by beta. Remember from the previous video that 1 divided by beta is the non-inverting gain and equals RF divided by R1 plus 1. Thus, the non-inverting gain sets the bandwidth for both the inverting and non-inverting configurations. Now let's take a look at secondary bandwidth effects. In this simulation, we again have a buffer with a gain of 1 volt per volt and an inverting amplifier with a gain of minus 1 volt per volt. These are the same circuit configurations as shown previously. The only difference, however, is that the amplifiers in this simulation are OPA827 macro models, whereas the previous simulation used a simplified single-pole op-amp model. The calculation of bandwidth is the same as before. Using the non-inverting gains, we calculate bandwidths of 11 MHz for the inverting amplifier and 22 MHz for the buffer. When we simulate the circuits, however, the bandwidths are 18 MHz and 34.7 MHz. Neither of these match the calculation. Why? Real-world amplifiers and robust simulation models have multiple poles in their open-loop gain curve, also known as AOL. We have already discussed the presence of a low frequency or dominant pole. The other poles are typically placed outside the unity gain bandwidth of the device. However, they can still affect the bandwidth. This slide depicts the AOL and phase curves for a simplified simulation model on the left. Notice that only the dominant pole appears in the AOL curve. When we look at the corresponding phase plot, we see the corresponding 90 degrees of phase shift due to the dominant pole. At higher frequency, there is clearly no additional pole since the phase plot remains constant. Recall that phase starts to change 1 decade prior to the pole frequency. On the right side, we see the AOL and phase curves for a more comprehensive 2-pole simulation model. Again, we see the presence of the dominant pole at low frequency. Looking at the phase plot, we see a shift, which indicates the presence of a high frequency pole. Notice that even though the pole is located beyond the unity gain bandwidth, it still affects the phase within the bandwidth of the device. The second pole in the AOL curve will affect the magnitude and phase of the op-amp's closed-loop response. In fact, the closed-loop response of an amplifier with two or more poles in the AOL curve is given by this transfer function, where S is J times omega, omega n is the natural frequency, and zeta is the damping factor. The log magnitude graph of the second-order system shows the gain in dB versus frequency for different values of zeta. Notice that for some values of zeta, the gain increases greatly near the natural frequency. This dramatic increase is called gain peaking. Zeta is related to the positioning of the second pole. When the second pole is at very high frequencies relative to the unity gain frequency, the value of zeta is large, and there is effectively no gain peaking. However, if the second pole is close to the unity gain frequency, the value of zeta is small, and peaking can be significant. Gain peaking occurs with real-world op-amps and is modeled in most op-amp macro models. Gain peaking will introduce errors for frequencies near the natural frequency and will affect the bandwidth. Here we have a plot of the open-loop gain of an amplifier and the closed-loop gain of a buffer. The open-loop gain curve is shown by the red dotted line, while the closed-loop gain is the solid blue line. The dominant pole in the AOL curve is located at 0.6 Hz. At frequencies greater than 0.6 Hz, the AOL curve rolls off at a rate of -20 dB per decade, until it crosses unity gain, or 0 dB, which is approximately 2 MHz. Notice that the closed-loop gain starts to follow the AOL curve once loop gain runs out. This plot also shows the presence of a second, high-frequency pole located at 27 MHz. Above this frequency, the AOL curve decreases at a rate of 40 dB per decade. The location of the second pole will affect the bandwidth of the circuit. We will find that as the frequency of the pole decreases, the bandwidth will increase, and vice versa. Now let's zoom in on the high-frequency portion of the graph. When the second pole is located at 27 MHz, we find the bandwidth, or -3 dB point, is 2.1 MHz. In the next few slides, we will decrease the frequency of the second pole location from 27 MHz down to 2.5 MHz. The second pole frequency was reduced from 27 MHz to 12.4 MHz, and the bandwidth increased from 2.1 MHz to 2.2 MHz. Now I will flip through the slides quickly. Notice the bandwidth increases as the second pole frequency decreases. Finally, when the second pole is near the unity gain bandwidth, the closed-loop bandwidth stops changing and we see significant gain peaking. This table summarizes the effect of the second pole's location versus peaking and closed-loop bandwidth. It is worth noting that the peaking effect will only happen for low gains. In later videos, we will cover the subject of stability and show more details on the concept of gain peaking. For now, it is important to be aware that gain peaking can occur in amplifiers with second poles in their AOL. Furthermore, this effect is normally included in SPICE op-amp macro models. Finally, the magnitude of the peaking should generally be less than a few decibels, and the change in bandwidth should be less than a factor of 2. In summary, this video discussed why you should always use the non-inverting gain to calculate bandwidth and secondary effects, namely high-frequency pole location, on bandwidth. Thank you for your time. Please try the quiz to check your understanding of this video's content.